A much needed fillip or a stimulus, you might say, was provided to the India Indonesia relations on the sidelines of the recently concluded Republic Day. Mr. Prabowo Subianto, the Indonesian president, graced the occasion as the chief guest, and the following day, some important agreements were signed in the field of maritime security, trade, culture, digital cooperation, and the like. And most importantly, it was considered to be a slap in the face of Pakistan, considering that Indonesia hosts or boasts the largest Muslim population worldwide, followed by Pakistan and obviously India. So it also further cemented the secular credentials of a great nation. First of all, the most interesting part, we are going to discuss the location, the geography, how it is strategically placed. So here you can see this entire, it is strategically placed. So this is Java, Sumatra. So Sumatra, here there is a province Banda Aceh, a city also. It Here we have our union territory all the way stretching south. So this is the place, the separation between the Indian territory marked by Andaman and Nicobar Islands and the main Sumatra Island. Of course, the capital, Jakarta. So the interesting thing is it is spread not only to Java and Sumatra, then we have Bali, Lombok, Sulawesi Island, even the Borneo Island. There is this part, the Kalimantan part belongs to Indonesia. This left part is this part belongs to Malaysia, the Sabah and Sarawak province, and this one of the Asian nations, Brunei, is also part of this island. And just for information, interesting part is that because of haphazard urbanization due to rising sea levels, there is a capital planned for the new capital planned for the country Indonesia in this Kalimantan island by the name of Nusantara. And obviously, another interesting fact that this island, this archipelago, one of the largest archipelagos, boasts or consists of around 17,504 islands. It extends even this western part. This is the Guinea Island, and the right is another separate sovereign country, Papua New Guinea, and the left is the Irian Jaya, which is again a part of Indonesia. So it is large, expanse, large spread. Of course, this Malaysia, Singapore, this strait is the famed Malacca Strait. Again, in one of the previous lectures when we were discussing about the Panama Canal, so I told you the interesting difference between a canal and a strait. Both conform or both refer to a narrow waterway which connect two larger water bodies, but a strait is a naturally formed, naturally occurring water body, whereas a canal is artificially constructed, like we have the Panama Canal and the Suez Canal. So it is also a very important trade way for conducting trade, connecting the Asian countries, the Pacific Ocean with the Indian Ocean, and subsequently with India. Obviously, another piece of information, if you are interested, this island has been formed due to the subduction boundaries. That is, a lot of plate tectonic movement is going here, and that is also, this is a hotspot or a hotbed of a large amount of active volcano eruptions. The recently volcano erupted on the island of Bali. Some examples of volcanoes: Semeru, Merapi, Krakatau. So all these explosive volcanoes are there. So this is what we have to know about Indonesia. Okay, so let's go back. So volcanoes, so some history also we are going to discuss. Obviously, you have seen the flag of Indonesia, the the red, and then subsequently we have white. But the interesting another interesting part is that the Monaco is also not a biscuit, but a country in Europe, small, very small, tiny speck country. It also has the same flag, but the only difference is the ratio. Monaco has its flag in the proportion of 4 is to 5, while Indonesia has a flag in the ratio proportion of 2 is to 3. And another interesting fact, if we reverse the colors, that is, we place white on the north or on top and red below, we get the flag of another important country in Europe known as Poland. So all this interesting questions. So some history about Indonesia. So you might have heard about the Chola Empire, which was a prominent empire in the 11th century. And the history goes that the Rajendra one of the prominent rulers of the Chola Empire, he extended his influence or extended his empire all the way to this present day Indonesia, the country of Indonesia. So this area of present day in Indonesia was also known as the Srivijaya Empire. And recently, very recently in September 2024, this Port Blair located, which is the capital of the UT of Andaman and Nicobar Islands and located on the South Andaman Island, was renamed to Sri Vijayapuram. So although we are not trying to establish any supremacy over Indonesia, but we are trying to shed our colonial past. So obviously, it was Port Blair was named after one of the British generals, Archibald Blair. So just to symbolize the anti-colonial measures, and why the anti-colonial measures or anti-colonial sentiment is I'm emphasizing time and again because this paved the common ground for the growth of India and Indonesia relations. So obviously, like India was under the control of British, one of the European superpowers during that time. So this Indonesia was under the rule of the Dutch, the present day Netherlands. Okay, again interesting. This is not flag of France. To create a flag of France, just rotate it 90-degree clockwise. So we have blue, white, and red. Of course, the proportion will be different. So this Dutch Empire ruled with brutal force over Indonesia, and although Indonesia proclaimed its independence in 1945, it was only in 1949 that the Dutch relinquished its control or its rule over Indonesia completely. And in 1946, when Jawaharlal Nehru formed the interim government, just an year previous to when India attained independence. He was a champion among various other freedom fighters for the cause of anti imperialism all across Asia as well as Africa. So there were nationalistic sentiments, these sentiments, nationalist sentiments, the same sentiments brimming of anti imperialism and sovereignty, self sufficiency, self governance. So these paved as common grounds, coherent grounds, which were further after independence was gained. The president who became the Indonesian president was Sukarno. So he reciprocated, he was thankful, immensely grateful to the support of Nehru and various other freedom fighters who were very vocal about the anti imperialism and escape from the clutches of the colonial rule. And this, the Nam. So there is a place in Indonesia, Bandung. So Bandung, the Bandung Conference was held in 1955, and in 1961 the non-aligned movement came into picture. The five major figures, prominent figures, was of course Nehru of India. Then we have Sukarno of Indonesia, Joseph Broz Tito of the erstwhile Yugoslavia, which no longer exists. Then Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana, and of course the Gamal Abdel Nasser of Egypt. So these five fellows were the five founding members of the non-aligned movement. Obviously, it was the era of the Cold War, post World War II, 1945 onwards, two major blocks, the NATO and the Warsaw Pact, that is headed by the US and the USSR respectively. A lot of other organizations, CETO, CENTO, were also coming into picture. But like we have always maintained neutrality in the global relations, so this brought us together. So another fact, Sukarno graced the first Republic Day on 26 January 1950 as a chief guest. So it is a milestone The 75 years, another Indonesian president has visited our country, although there have been visits by Indian prime ministers as well as the Indonesian presidents. So India in 1971 and 76 under the leadership of prime ministers such as Indira Gandhi and Rajiv Gandhi, they also visited these places in Indonesia. And this place, this I was referring, although Indonesia declared its independence in 1945, but Japan lost, and the some of the territory of Indonesia, which Dutch had acquired or Dutch ruled over, Dutch reacquired that territory after Japan was defeated in 1945, but again, due to various measures, various anti imperialist sentiments, the nationalist rise of the nationalist forces, the Dutch finally had to vacate and recognize the sovereignty of the Indonesian nation. So, this was the beginning or the burgeoning rise of the relations between India and Indonesia. Then, during the 1960s to 1970s, the relations between India and Indonesia rapidly deteriorated. Why? Because initially China, India and Indonesia both favored the communist China. Okay, Nehru was also considered naive by various contemporary politicians because he supported the membership of China in the UN Security Council also. But in the 1962 war, the relations between India and its friendly neighbor China, it deteriorated, but the same could not be said for Indonesia. So Indonesia continued its relationships with the communist China. Moreover, in the 1965 war, again Sukarno was the president at that time also. In the 1965 war, India-Pakistan war, again, Indonesia further sided with Pakistan. Instead of maintaining a neutral stance vis-a-vis Kashmir, it supported the Pakistan's cause and said that Pakistan should be prevented or safeguarded from the aggression showcased by India. So that is like very surprising. And during that time, Indonesia also fueled anti-Indian sentiments among the Indonesian population and even supplied Pakistan with weapons. So again, the deterioration of the relations. Contrasting to this 1945, 1949, this 1950s and 60s, India was so helpful towards Indonesia that Nehru at that time even sent a young Biju Patnaik to safely escort the president at that time, the leaders of Indonesia at that time. So this was the kind of help that was, and even to prevent the Dutch reoccupation of Indonesia, the government at that time in India, it also prohibited the Dutch airlines from flying over India and to restrict all the trade measures, all the trade agreements between India and Indonesia. And look what how Indonesia reciprocated. Okay. And then 1970s to 1980s, of course, the USSR, the India-USSR relations, India cozied up to USSR because of various trade agreements. The USSR supplied India with a lot of artillery, various defense equipments, and it's also sided with the North Vietnam, we can say. Vietnam War took place during this decade, and North Vietnam was again, it was the USSR sided with that. Then it also cozied up in some way or the other with the USA. So these relations. So during that time, what happened was in during that time, Sukarno, the president, earlier used to maintain a very precarious, delicate balance because at that time Indonesia was under the influence of communists also, military generals also. So Sukarno, there was a left-wing coup again which was again supported by USSR to displace Sukarno, but the military at that time. So Suharto was one of the major generals who came to power after the displacing or the subversion of the Sukarno government. So that also led to the relations, a lukewarm relationship period, because unlike Sukarno, Suharto wanted to improve relationship. Whatever damage has had the Sukarno government had led to between India and Indonesia relations, Suharto want to issue reparations. He wanted to repair damage and trade relations. And like I said, various visits were conducted between the respective leaders of both the countries. But the hallmark or the milestone between India and Indonesia relations, that is, they were truly revived in the 1990s under the influence or under the leadership of Prime Minister PV Narasimha Rao, and obviously liberalization reforms like we have discussed in the lecture previously, which I conducted over late PM Manmohan Singh. So PV Narasimha Rao, we gave the look east policy. So look east with respect to India, of course, the Asian nations, and so trade, maritime cooperation, exchange of culture, a lot of that was done. And in 2014, Prime Minister Modi, he further refined or further augmented, strengthened the look east policy, and he termed it as Act East policy. So much so that the trade has now burgeoned to around $40 billion as of 2022-23, and Indonesia is the second largest trading partner of India amongst the Asian nations. So 10 Asian nations are there. So India basically it imports palm oil, coal, okay. Basic imports from Indonesia are these, and India in turn exports steel, machinery, telecommunication equipments, refined petroleum products, agricultural commodities. So, so the trade has prospered. Okay. So further, what we what we have to realize that still we have a long way to go. The India Indonesia relations really have the potential to burgeon and progress further. We have a lot of details. And again, I forgot to mention one interesting point. So actually this is not any regular picture. This in fact is an illustration of one of the Shaivite temples which is located in the Bali island of Indonesia. It is on the Bratton Lake, and it is known as the Puru Ulundana, Puru Ulun Danu Bratton Temple, okay, over the Devi, named after Devi Danu. So all this, just like India boasts of its secular credentials, Indonesia also falls in the same boat, and it also further invites India to further strengthen the relations between the two countries. So till we meet again next time, Jai Hind.